Welcome to my podcast. Today I'll be previewing the Eastern Conference in the NHL. Atlantic Division Season Preview. Coming off an emotional loss in the Stanley Cup Finals against the St. Louis Blues, the Boston Bruins will be eager to get back to the Stanley Cup Finals. However, it will be a really tough journey back to the finals because the Atlantic Division is going to be really good this year. In the offseason, the Bruins lost Marcus Johansson to free agency, but signed Brett Ritchie to replace him. The Boston Bruins still have one of the best lines in the NHL with Patrice Bergeron, David Pastrnak, and Brad Marchand. They are capable of carrying the scoring for the team. David Krejci, Jake DeBrusk, Charlie Coyle, and Danton Heinen will provide secondary scoring for the team. The Bruins also have a solid D-core, but with Zdeno Chara getting another year older, Charlie McAvoy and Torrey Krug will have to take their game to the next level. Tuukka Rask is still one of the better goalies in the league and gives the Bruins a chance to win every night. As long as the Bruins have their top line, a good supporting cast, and Tuukka Rask, the Bruins should be a playoff team this season. However, if they finish second or third again, they would be matched up against the Maple Leafs for the third straight year in a row, which could be troubling with the new additions Toronto has added in the offseason. Standing predictions, third in the Atlantic Division. The Buffalo Sabres are a more improved team from last season. In the offseason, the Sabres made a few moves to improve the team. First, they re-signed Jeff Skinner to an 8-year deal worth $9 million per season. Then they acquired Jimmy Vesey from the New York Rangers and Colin Miller from the Golden Knights. In free agency, the Buffalo Sabres signed Marcus Johansson to a 2-year deal worth $4.5 million per season. With the additions of Jimmy Vesey and Marcus Johansson up front, and Colin Miller on the back end, the Sabres have a much deeper team. When healthy, the Skinner, Eichel, and Reinhart line is quite deadly. The question is if Skinner can stay healthy. Casey Mittelstadt needs to take this game to the next level for the Sabres to be a threat in their division. The newly assembled third line of Jimmy Vesey, Evan Rodriguez, and Marcus Johansson could be the X factor this season. Rasmus Dahlin and Rasmus Ristolainen are expected to be the top pair for Buffalo. They should be a dynamic first pair. The deep D-core also features Brandon Montour and Colin Miller, two under-the-radar defensemen. Just like last year, goaltending is going to be the question mark for the Sabres. The tandem of Carter Hutton and Linus Ullmark didn't fare too well last season, so I don't think it will be any different this year. The Buffalo Sabres are a better team than last year, but they still aren't good enough to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. Standing predictions, 13th in the Eastern Conference. The Detroit Red Wings are coming off their worst season in over a decade, and it doesn't seem like things are going to be better. The only addition the Red Wings made this offseason was signing Valtteri Filppula in free agency. I expect a few young prospects like Filip Zadina, Michael Rasmussen, and Philip Hronek to make significant contributions to the team this year. The Detroit Red Wings have decent young forwards like Dylan Larkin, Andrei Athanasiou, Anthony Mantha, and Tyler Bertuzzi. Their defense, on the other hand, is pretty bad, considering they still have Jonathan Ericsson as their second pair defenseman. The goalie situation is okay, but a Jimmy Howard-Jonathan Bernier tandem isn't gonna save their pathetic defense. The Detroit Red Wings are gonna be one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference this season, but there is some silver lining in all of this. They will have a chance to win a lottery pick in the draft. But there is some silver lining in all of this. They will have a chance to win a lottery pick in the draft with tons of high-end talent. Standings prediction, 15th in the Eastern Conference. The Florida Panthers have turned themselves into a contender in the Eastern Conference with the moves they made this offseason. In the offseason, the Florida Panthers signed Sergei Bobrovsky, Brett Connolly, and Anton Strawman. Sergei Bobrovsky will instantly make the Florida Panthers a playoff team. He is a goalie who can single-handedly steal games. The Panthers already have an incredible young core with Alexander Barkov, Jonathan Huberdeau, Vincent Trocheck, and Aaron Ekblad. They also have great veteran players to complement their young core with players like Mike Hoffman, Evgeny Dadonov, Keith Yandel, and Anton Strawman to stabilize that young core. Owen Tippett is projected to be the Panthers' second-line right winger this season. He should be a good fit on the line with Trocheck and Hoffman. Make no mistake about it, the Florida Panthers are for real this year and should not be taken as a joke anymore. With new head coach Joel Quenneville and superstar goalie Sergei Bobrovsky, the Panthers will be looking to win the first Stanley Cup in franchise history. Standing predictions, first wild card in the Eastern Conference. The Montreal Canadiens could either be the most surprising team in the Eastern Conference this year or the most disappointing team. In the offseason, the Canadiens added defenseman Ben Chiarot in free agency to bolster their defensive depth. Expect prospects such as Ryan Poehling, Nick Suzuki, and Noah Juulsen to make an impact on the team this year. The Montreal Canadiens will only be as good as Carey Price is. He has to stand on his head for the Canadiens to have a chance at making the playoffs. Shea Weber is the glue to the Montreal Canadiens defense. When healthy, Weber is one of the best defensemen in the league, but in the last few years, he has been hampered by injuries. Even though the Montreal Canadiens don't have a superstar on offense, they do have 4 solid offensive lines. Max Domi, Jonathan Drouin, Brendan Gallagher, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and Thomas Tatar are going to be key players on offense for the Canadiens this season. As always, the success of the Canadiens weighs heavily on Carey Price, and if he stays healthy. When at the top of his game, Carey Price is capable of carrying the team to the playoffs. Standing predictions, 11th in the Eastern Conference. The Ottawa Senators are going to be one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference this season and will be trying to score a top pick in next year's draft. The Senators made 2 trades in the offseason. First, they acquired Nikita Zaitsev and Connor Brown in a multiplayer trade that sent Cody Ceci to Toronto Maple Leafs. Then they acquired Artem Anisimov from the Chicago Blackhawks for Zach Smith. In free agency, the Ottawa Senators signed Ron Hazy and Tyler Ennis, 2 very solid veteran players. The positive thing for the Senators is that they have many talented young players in their lineup, such as Thomas Chabot, Eric Brandstrom, Brady Tkachuk, Colin White, and Drake Batherson. The Senators also have a solid group of veterans in the locker room who can help mentor these young players, such as Artem Anisimov, Ron Hazy, JG Pajot, Mikhail Bodker, and Bobby Ryan. Even though the Senators may have a rough season, they have a bright future and should only get better after the 2020 draft. Standing predictions, 14th in the Eastern Conference. The Tampa Bay Lightning are still the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. They still have the same core from last year, but they did lose some key players. In the offseason, the Lightning made 2 trades. First, they traded JT Miller to the Vancouver Canucks for a first-round pick in 2020. The Lightning also traded Ryan Callahan and a 5th-round pick in 2020 to the Ottawa Senators for Mike Condon and a 6th-round pick in 2020. In free agency, the Lightning lost Anton Strawman to the rival Florida Panthers. To replace Strawman, the Lightning signed Kevin Shattenkirk and Luke Shen. The Tampa Bay Lightning are a very deadly team. They have 3 legit superstars in Nikita Kucherov, Steven Stamkos, and Victor Hedman, complemented by star players Braden Point and Andrei Vasilevsky. The Lightning are more than just high-end talent. They have terrific depth and goaltending as well. For me, the player to watch this year is Mikhail Sergachev. He is on a contract year and is due for a breakout season. Coming off a disappointing playoff performance, after dominating the regular season, the Lightning will be eager to prove doubters wrong. For that reason, I believe the Lightning will be hungry and eager to get back to the Stanley Cup Finals. Standing predictions, 1st in the Atlantic Division. After getting eliminated in the first round of playoffs in back-to-back years, the Toronto Maple Leafs should be motivated to get past this hurdle. The biggest story surrounding the Maple Leafs this offseason was the Mitch Marner contract situation. Mitch Marner is still not signed yet, and it's causing the Maple Leafs fans to be impatient. However, the Maple Leafs are not panicking. Instead, they made moves just in case Marner doesn't sign. The Leafs made 2 trades this offseason. First, they acquired Tyson Barrie and Alex Kerfoot from the Colorado Avalanche for Nazem Kadri, Callie Rosen, and a 3rd-round pick. Then the Maple Leafs acquired Cody Ceci in a multiplayer trade from the Ottawa Senators for Connor Brown and Nikita Zaitsev. In free agency, the Leafs signed Jason Spezza. He will be a great 4th-line center. Regardless of whether Mitch Marner plays or not this year, the Leafs have assembled a team that is going to be deadly. They have 2 bona fide superstars in Matthews and Tavares, 3 if Marner resigns, along with great supporting players such as William Nylander, Kasperi Kapanen, Alex Kerfoot, Andreas Janssen, and Zach Hyman. Defensively, the Leafs are going to be much improved, as they will have 3 strong D pairs. The addition of Tyson Barrie gives them 2 deadly puck-moving defensemen and will give them 2 good power play units. As always, Frederik Andersen will be the key to success. If Andersen plays well, they could win the East. The Toronto Maple Leafs have all the skill in the world, but due to the current playoff format, they might get matched up against the Boston Bruins again. If this happens, they will have to find a way to beat their arch nemesis. Standing predictions, 2nd in the Atlantic Division. And now a word from our sponsor, Metropolitan Division Preview. The Carolina Hurricanes are an under-the-radar team in the Metropolitan Division that could end up surprising some people. Even though the Hurricanes don't have a superstar, they have a few borderline star players in their lineup. Last season, they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals before losing to the Boston Bruins in a sweep. The first priority for the Hurricanes this offseason was re-signing Sebastian Aho. Thanks to an offer sheet from the Canadiens, the Hurricanes quickly matched the contract, locking up Aho for another 5 years. In the offseason, the Hurricanes made a few trades. First, they acquired James Reimer from the Florida Panthers for Scott Darling and a 6th-round pick in 2020. Then they traded Calvin DeHaan and Alexis Sorella to the Chicago Blackhawks for Gustav Forsling and Anton Forsberg. The Hurricanes also acquired Eric Haula from the Vegas Golden Knights for Nikolai Waugh and a conditional 5th round pick in 2020. In free agency, the Hurricanes lost Michael Furlan, but signed Ryan Dzingel to replace him. The Carolina Hurricanes are going to be sleepers in the Eastern Conference this year. Even though they don't have a bona fide superstar, they have 4 really solid lines and 3 really good D pairs. The question mark for the Hurricanes is going to be goaltending. If Peter Mrazek plays well, the Hurricanes have the potential to be a playoff team. After the Washington Capitals, the Metropolitan Division is pretty wide open, so the Hurricanes have a chance to make the playoffs as a top 3 seed in that division. Standing predictions, 10th in the Eastern Conference. The Columbus Blue Jackets went from being a playoff team in the Metropolitan Division to possibly the worst team in the Eastern Conference. The Blue Jackets lost 4 key players this offseason in Sergei Bobrovsky, Artemi Panarin, Matt Duchene, and Ryan Dzingel. Bobrovsky, Panarin, and Duchene were 3 of their best players, so they basically lost the majority of their core. The only signing the Blue Jackets made to make up for the loss of their 3 best players was bringing in Gustav Nyquist on a 4-year deal. The bright spot for the Blue Jackets is their defense. They still have a terrific first pair in Seth Jones and Zach Werenski. The Blue Jackets' offense, however, is totally depleted. After losing Panarin and Duchene, now their top offensive players are Cam Atkinson and Pierre-Luc Dubois. What used to be the biggest strength for the Blue Jackets is now the biggest weakness. After losing Bobrovsky, they didn't sign anyone in free agency and opted to stick with Jonas Korpisalo. While Korpisalo could end up surprising us, he isn't likely to steal games. The Columbus Blue Jackets might actually be the weakest team in the Eastern Conference now. But that wouldn't be the worst thing, because they could get a chance to win Alexis Lafreniere. Standings prediction, 16th in the Eastern Conference. In one offseason, the New Jersey Devils have turned themselves into a playoff team. They had the first overall pick in the 2019 draft and selected Jack Hughes with that pick. After drafting Jack Hughes, the Devils acquired star defenseman PK Subban from the Nashville Predators. This gave them a stud number 1 defenseman they were looking for. In free agency, the Devils signed Wayne Simmonds to a 1-year deal worth $5 million. Simmonds is going to be a great addition to the new-look Devils power play. The opportunistic Devils were not done there. Thanks to the Vegas Golden Knights cap situation, they weren't able to sign Nikita Gusev, so the Devils were able to acquire him for 2 draft picks. Gusev was subsequently re-signed to a 2-year deal worth $4.5 million per season. The new-look Devils have some very talented young forwards like Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, and Nikita Gusev, who are hungry and eager to make the playoffs. They also have a bunch of savvy vets that can help mentor them, like Taylor Hall, Kyle Palmieri, and Wayne Simmonds. Looking at the Devils roster right now, they have 4 good centers, which will allow them to roll 4 lines. They also potentially could have 3 great D pairs if Ty Smith makes the roster. The goaltending will be the deciding factor as to whether or not the Devils make the playoffs. Corey Schneider and Mackenzie Blackwood both had hot streaks in the past, but can they be consistent? The hype surrounding the Devils this year is insane. They seem to be all in on making a deep playoff run. Standing predictions, 2nd wild card in the Eastern Conference. The New York Islanders should still be a competitive team this season, despite losing a few key players this offseason. The Islanders lost Valtteri Filppula and Robin Lehner, 2 important players on last year's team. To replace Robin Lehner, they signed Semyon Varlamov to a 4-year deal worth $5 million per season. The Islanders re-signed 3 of their own free agents in Anders Lee, Brock Nelson, and Jordan Eberle. Anders Lee was re-signed to a 7-year deal worth $7 million per season. Brock Nelson was re-signed to a 6-year deal worth $6 million per season. And Jordan Eberle was re-signed to a 5-year deal worth $5.5 million per season. Because of the system that Barry Trotz runs, the Islanders will still be a very tough team to play against, as they have a very solid group of players that know their role and a coach that knows how to push the right buttons. If the game was played on paper, the Islanders would be one of the weaker teams in the division. But since it's not, they still have a chance to make the playoffs. Standings prediction, 9th in the Eastern Conference. The New York Rangers are a much improved team from last year, but they still aren't good enough to make the playoffs. The Rangers acquired Jacob Trouba from the Winnipeg Jets for Neil Pionk and a 1st-round pick in 2019. Trouba was eventually re-signed to an 8-year deal worth $8 million per season. The Rangers had the 2nd pick in the 2019 draft and selected Kaapo Kakko with that pick. The Rangers had the 2nd pick in the 2019 draft and selected Kaapo Kakko with that pick. In free agency, the Rangers signed Artemi Panarin to a 7-year deal worth $11.6 million per season. He will immediately be the Rangers' go-to forward. There are 4 young players to watch this year for the Rangers: Kaapo Kakko, Vitaly Kravtsov, Philip Chytil, and Adam Fox. These 4 players should play a huge role for the team this year. There are 2 major weaknesses with the Rangers. The Rangers arguably have the weakest center depth in the division, which is not good news because success in the new NHL is predicated on depth at the center position. In a very tough Metropolitan Division, the Rangers will go through growing pains with so many young players in the lineup, which may cause them to miss the playoffs. Goaltending in the past was never an issue for the Rangers, but with Henrik Lundqvist getting older, the Rangers are going to have to go forward with a tandem. If they are to tandem Alexander Georgiev with Henrik Lundqvist, the New York Rangers are in a bit of a transition phase this year. While the team has improved, I still don't think they are good enough to make the playoffs yet. Standing prediction, 12th in the Eastern Conference. The Philadelphia Flyers are a much improved team from last year with the moves they made this offseason. In the offseason, the Flyers made 2 trades to bolster their defense. First, they acquired Matt Niskanen from the Washington Capitals for Radko Gudas. Then they acquired Justin Braun from the San Jose Sharks for 2 draft picks. The Flyers also traded Ryan Hartman to the Dallas Stars for Tyler Pitlick. In free agency, the Flyers signed Kevin Hayes to a 7-year deal worth $7.14 million per season. The Flyers already have a really good top 6, which includes Claude Giroux, Jacob Voracek, JVR, Sean Couturier, Travis Konechny, and Kevin Hayes. They also have a really solid D-core with the additions of Justin Braun and Matt Niskanen. The X factor for the Flyers is going to be Nolan Patrick, who is projected to play on the 3rd line with Morgan Frost and Oscar Lindblom. For the first time in over 20 years, the Flyers have a legit stud goalie. Carter Hart has the potential to be a star goalie in the league, and that is just what the Flyers need. On paper, the Flyers look like they have it all, but for whatever reason, they always seem to underperform. The Flyers logistically have the potential to be 2nd in the Metro, but realistically will end up either 3rd or in the 2nd wild card. Standing predictions, 3rd in the Metropolitan Division. The Pittsburgh Penguins might not be as dominant as they once were, but they are still a threat in the Metropolitan Division. After getting swept in the first round by the New York Islanders, the Penguins had a big roster makeover. The first move was trading Olli Maatta to the Chicago Blackhawks for Dominik Kahun. Then they dealt Phil Kessel in a blockbuster trade to the Arizona Coyotes for Alex Galchenyuk and Pierre-Olivier Joseph. In free agency, the Penguins signed Brandon Tanev to a 6-year deal worth $3.5 million per season. The Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be really disappointed in Alex Galchenyuk, especially because he has to replace Phil Kessel's production. Once again, Phil Kessel is undervalued and is traded when things get bad. The Penguins better hope that Galchenyuk fits well with Malkin, otherwise this is a bad trade. The Penguins still have Crosby and Malkin. As long as they have that dynamic duo, they are a threat in the Metropolitan Division. Role players for the Penguins, such as Nick Bjugstad, Jared McCann, Ryan Rust, and Dominik Kahun, will need to be good for the Penguins to make a deep run. Last season, the defense was a cause for concern, and while they didn't improve their defense, they got rid of their weak link, Olli Maatta. Now fully healthy this season, Justin Schultz should be in line for a bounce-back year. Matt Murray needs to be more consistent than he was last year if the Penguins want to contend for a Stanley Cup. Last season was Murray's worst statistical season since entering the league. He should be eager to have a bounce-back year. The Pittsburgh Penguins have an aging core, but they still have 2 bona fide superstars that can take over a game. For that reason alone, the Penguins should still be a playoff team this year. Standing prediction, 2nd in the Metropolitan Division. The Washington Capitals are still the team to beat in the Metropolitan Division. They still have the same core of players from the team that won the division the last 4 years. To shed some cap room, the Capitals traded Matt Niskanen to the Philadelphia Flyers for Radko Gudas. Then the Caps dealt Andrei Burakovsky to the Colorado Avalanche for 2 draft picks. The Caps used the freed up cap space to re-sign Carl Hagelin to a 4-year deal. In free agency, the Capitals lost Brett Connolly, but signed Richard Panik, Garnet Hathaway, and Brandon Levesque. The top 6 of the Capitals is still deadly, and they will still provide consistent scoring on a nightly basis. The Capitals still have the same power play personnel that has struck fear into opponents for years. The Capitals also have a pretty solid D-core, but the second pair could be an issue. When playing against teams with terrific second line centers. Braden Holtby is a terrific regular season goalie, but the question is, Can he play as well as he did during the 2018 Stanley Cup run? If he can, the Capitals would be one of the favorites to win the Cup. The Washington Capitals have all the pieces in place to be a contender for the Stanley Cup. It's just a matter of if they can get the job done. Standing predictions. First in the Metropolitan Division. In my next podcast, I preview the Western Conference in the NHL.